Hello, welcome to another episode of Ryan Michael Yoga. So, today I just wanted to talk to you a little bit. Really, what I want to do with this podcast more than anything. This video cast, vlog. I guess it's a vlog with this channel. Is just talk to you. So, why do we practice yoga? Why do we meditate? Why do we do breath practices? This is a conversation that I was having with a friend recently, and he brought up the fact that when you go to a yoga class, no teachers really expound upon it. They just say, okay, we're going to do these poses, we're going to breathe a bunch, we're going to blah, 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 the energy flow, whatever. Yoga's not about any of that. It's really not. And to different people, it has different meanings. But I'm going to give you my meaning, my definition of yoga, my purpose of yoga, because it does different things for different people, and people use it for different things. So for me, I take a little bit more of a traditional approach. So the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, in it he speaks of yoga being one thing and one thing only: to decrease and eventually remove, to control, to, it's a better word for it, to still the modifications of the mind, the fluctuations of the mind, the thoughts, the impressions, the things that affect, the habits and the patterns, the samskara, the vasanas, the vrittis, So when we practice yoga physically, what we're doing is we're moving the body. We are moving the body, but also moving our awareness in the body. When you open up an area and you stretch a muscle, you can't help but bring your mind to that area because you feel it suddenly. When you're using a muscle and it starts to get tired, you bring your mind to that area and you feel the exercise, the work you're doing. But it's not the exercise that's the benefit. I mean, sure, it is. That's one of the very many benefits of yoga, but the physical benefit is not what yoga is about, to me. And really, traditionally speaking. So we practice these poses and start to feel areas of our body because we're stretching, because we're working the muscles, because we are, just doing this even. This will bring some kind of sensation back into the wrist that we may not have ever had. Even doing this, like how often do you actually, stretch your fingers and move all the individual muscles and bones that are inside the hand? They can all move, You can do this and move just one of the bones. Because as we live, so much stagnancy happens in the body. We become stagnant, and thus our body's not moving. We're sitting in a chair all day, lounging in a couch all day, driving, sitting in a car. And this is actually the great benefit of sitting on the ground. Just really quick side tangent. Sorry, I have like a million frogs in my throat this morning for some reason. Yes, a million. Sitting on the ground, you sit in a way that you don't ever sit. How many of you actually sit on the ground ever? Let me know in the comments. And once you sit on the ground consistently and you get used to it and your body's like, oh, I actually really like this. This is so natural. What is this? Then you don't really like chairs anymore. Or you sit in chairs like you sit on the ground. I generally sit cross-legged in a chair. And the chair has to be flat. It can't be one of those ergonomic ones that like sits back and lifts the knees. That's so bad for your circulation. Oh my God, things just pool in your hips. Anyway, so back to the point. When we do these things in yoga that we don't usually do, we start to become aware mentally of those areas of the body. And this is so powerful. So I'll give you, I'm just going to continue actually. I was going to tell you my friend's explanation, but I want to continue with my own. So we have suddenly this awareness of the body that we never had before. And when we become more aware of the body, we become more aware of the mind. Because the body, in fact, is a physical representation of the mind. Think of when you're afraid. This is a mental feeling, you know. When you are scared, when you're sad, when you're angry, your breath changes. When you're angry, you get tense in certain areas. When you're scared, you get tense in certain areas. So these emotions have physical representation. And when we're in that emotion enough, when we have that physical representation, that physical expression of the emotion enough, then the body itself begins to remain in those states. The body does. The mind might kind of just move on and be like, oh, I'm happy again, whatever. But the body's still there because we're not aware of where in the body that's being held that tension, where we're feeling that tension in the body, where we're feeling the emotion that created that tension. So the emotion never actually leaves. And when we move the body, we suddenly are getting these emotions coming up. And it may not be really that strong, but it could be something like you have a little bit more of a temper than you used to. But that's because you are feeling anger that has been built up and built up and built up and put in and deposited in these different muscles, in your hips, in your joints. And when you start to move and get mobility, you know, then that anger is going to release. You can't avoid the anger. You can't overcome the anger without releasing it. This is so important. So important. Don't be afraid to release the anger. Don't be afraid to feel the anger or the sadness. Whatever it is that's in you that needs to be felt. So why release all this stuff? You know, we could just avoid it our whole lives. Well, so this gets to the next part, the next benefit of, and the next real reason that's a continuation of this original reason as to why we do yoga. Maybe it's the cacao that I'm drinking that's putting the frogs in my throat. So when we begin to release these emotions, then we start to figure out what and what is not us. Who are we? Have you ever wondered who you are? And I don't mean, oh, I'm a yoga teacher. That's who I am. That's not who you are. That's a thing you do. Right? That's just your job. You're not defined by your job, are you? You're not defined by your emotions, are you? Because your emotions, they come and they go. If you say you're a happy person, that's your identity. Well, realize that you're not always actually going to be happy. That's impossible unless you remove everything and realize the eternal bliss that lies below the surface. But you can't actually be happy all the time. Again, unless you realize that eternal bliss. But that's for a different conversation. Or maybe I'll get to that in the end. Because if you are happy, this happiness comes from an external source. It does. It just does. In the sense of how you see happiness. Because, well, what makes you happy? Why are you a happy person? I'm a happy person because I make good money. I feel really secure. I have a wonderful girlfriend. I have a beautiful car. I have all the things in my life that I need. And so I'm a happy person. But even if all you need to make you happy is food, water, and shelter, those are still external things. Those are not from you. Because you are within the body. You as the individual are within the body. And so when we practice yoga, we start to see all these emotions that we've picked up from the world, from these people, from these events, from these situations, and depositing them in our body. Because we like this emotion, so we're going to put that in here. We don't want this emotion, but we're still going to hold on to it because we're afraid of that emotion, so it's still with us. And so we pick up all these things, but all these things are not what we are. All these influences from other people are not what we are. Someone tells us, you should buy this because it's really cool. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to buy that. Cool. I'm going to do that. That's not you. That's influence from another person. When you watch TV and you see these commercials that are emotionally engaging, that are intellectually stimulating, it's the commercial that's doing it to you. It's the marketing that knows you. You are the target audience. They know you, and they're trying to sell something to you, so they influence you. And by selling something to you, they turn you into, again, further marketing, because you're going to go and talk about it. Do you want to be a marketer? Do you want to be a product, really? That's what you are for these companies. But that's beside the point. The point is that you're being influenced to believe you are this way or that way or that way or that way. So if you have all these people in your life that are telling you, you're so great, you're an asshole, you are this, you are that, as soon as people start telling you something that you are, maybe just take a step back. Because only you can actually know what you are. Nobody else knows what you are, who you are. And every time someone tells you who you are, you're going to pick up that. You're going to listen. Even if you say, no, you're wrong, you're going to listen. And that's going to be deposited in the body. So through yoga, the physical practice, we can open up areas that may have been previously unconscious, the legs, the arms, the torso, the neck, and basically unlock the deposit box at the bank and take all this stuff out that we've been putting in there, that we've been storing, and look at it and sort through it and be like, okay, do I want this? Do I want this? Do I want this? And then this is the benefit that where meditation comes in. Because in meditation, you get really quiet, you become really still, and when you become really still, the mind becomes more apparent. You can see all the things going on in the mind, the fluctuations of the mind. And it becomes easier to see all the fluctuations of the mind by working with the breath. One really simple example is you're doing a breath practice. I actually recorded one right before I recorded this video. That is so simple. You're just focusing on the nose, feeling the breath go in, feeling the breath go out. That's it. Watching the whole cycle of the breath by feeling it. And in doing this simple practice, you notice how, oh, the mind suddenly wants to go over here. The mind wants to go over here. The mind wants to go over here, all over the place. Because the mind's just distractible. It's not fighting. It's not like, no, we can't do this. It's just because the mind's so distractible. Because we're used to having a million things in our lives. We can't focus on one thing, like the breath. So we've used that as our focus. And by focusing here, we start to notice, again, all these other points that the mind is trying to pull us in. And you just notice it. You notice, okay, that was a thought. That thought was about that. Okay, come back to the breath. Oh, that was a thought. That thought was about that. Come back to the breath. And when you start to really bring your focus together into one point, then you're able to meditate. Because meditation requires focus. You need to be able to focus and keep your intention of whatever you're focusing on, in your mind. So I'll give you my own personal example. A lot of times, while I'm getting into the state of meditation, I just like to be really, really still and let the mind kind of just do this turmoil. By doing this turmoil and watching as I'm pulled around in all these directions, you're able to realize what's going on in the mind. Because if you just ignore the mind, you push it away, you focus on something else, focus on something else, focus on something else, yeah, you will be able to train the mind, perhaps. Well, yes, but there's something that comes, some kind of benefit that comes when you realize that the mind is doing all this stuff and you are not in control at all. Not at all. But the mind's just a tool. Thought is just a tool, and it doesn't have to be constant. So, in the physical practice, we open up the body and make ourselves more aware of the body and aware of how the mind has deposited things in the muscles and the joints, in the fascia, in the bones, all over. In pranayama, breath practice, which it's so much more than that, but that's a very simple explanation of it. We learn how to focus the mind and it also helps you become a little bit more aware of the mind in general, because the breath is so closely connected to the mind. It's the bridge between the body and the mind. So we're so used to being in the body, we follow the breath and we become more sensitive. Our awareness becomes more sensitive to the mind. The mind is very, very sensitive in its physical, in its form. The form of mind is very sensitive and subtle. That's what it is. It becomes more, our awareness becomes much more subtle. So the pranayama is there for focusing and becoming more subtle, and you have to have that sensitivity to the subtleness of the mind in order to look at it and see that you are more than that. So now meditation. There are different stages of meditation, but I kind of like to group all of them into one. We have concentration, dharana. We have, well, I guess you could say pratyahara, which is withdrawal of the senses, but that's a little bit more in pranayama in my opinion. It's like between the two. We have concentration, meditation itself, and then enlightenment, which is complete stillness of the mind. And I'm going to talk about this in another video, because I think this has been long enough. But yeah, so the purpose of yoga, to make yourself more conscious of the body, more conscious of the breath, more conscious of the mind. And I will finish this in part 2. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe for me if you don't mind. I'd appreciate that, and you'd appreciate that as well, because there's more to come, and there's a lot of good stuff. There's a lot of good stuff coming your way. Yoga classes, breath practices, meditation, mostly breath practices though, because breath turns into meditation if you do it in the proper fashion. And then of course, talks. So anyway, thanks once again. Namaste.